Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me again. And if you do like this content, then please give me a like and a subscribe. That will really help the channel grow. Certainly in the very early days, I'm doing my best to bring you regular content in interesting places, such as this over at St Osyth, which is a lovely old wreck and a really interesting jetty over to the right hand side too. So I'm going to do some long exposures today because there's not much interest in the sky, unfortunately. There are some clouds moseying on by, so they may leave some interesting streaks with a 10-stop filter. The tide is 4.9 metres today, so it's quite a high tide, so I may have to retreat to a high point at peak tide, but before that the tide should cover most of the foreground interest, which will give me a really minimal shot for a 10-stop, which works really well with this jetty on the right hand side and the wreck over on the left. So I will show you my composition and then yeah, wait for the tide to peak. The wind is blowing the tide in as well at the moment, so it may be that it's slightly higher than advertised. Simply because the wind is forcing the water shorewards. But, yeah, I was hoping for a more overcast day, to be honest, just to give me that very minimalist feel, but in black and white I think this will work well. So that's my composition with the wreck on the left hand side there and the old jetty on the right hand side, just zoomed in a little bit so that I haven't got any legs crossing out of frame, and I think that will work well. The tide's climbing quite quickly, so yeah, I'm going to start doing a few exposures and then maybe change my composition to see whether I can get just a very minimal shot of the jetty on its own, because I think they do work really well. Certainly an old gnarly jetty, but the higher the tide gets, the less gap there is between the jetty and the tide, so you don't see as much of the leg, so you don't get leg reflection, and also you don't get that separation and the minimalist effect of a jetty leading out. So yeah, I'm going to have a play. So for this one I'm shooting at 20 seconds, f14, ISO 64, and I'm focusing on this point here, which will give me plenty of depth of field. f14 is as far as I'll go because I don't want any diffraction. Using the cable release so as not to disturb the camera during the exposure, and I am going to block the wind a bit as well. So that's correct for the wreck itself and the scene, but because the little jetty to the side of the wreck is in very deep shadow, I'm going to do a longer exposure and then blend those two together afterwards. So I'm going to do 30 seconds at f11 so that I can have some shadow detail. On the jetty just to the right hand side of the wreck that's in deep shadow, so that will help balance the photograph. Compositionally I think it's quite balanced in that I've taken 2/3 of the jetty onwards and this portion of the foreground, although the water is now coming in fast enough to hide that foreground, but we've still got enough separation between the the water surface and the base of the jetties, so I think that will look pretty good. I've done a little bit of foreground manipulation here, in that there was a toilet sticking out over there, a big white toilet bowl, so I've hidden that up with some bricks and some seaweed to try and hide it. So again, camera settings, I'm at about 24mm, 30 seconds, f14, ISO 64, histogram's looking good. We've actually got the detail all the way in, including the shadow detail, but I will do a longer exposure of the shadows on the right hand side again. So there's a wisp of very high cloud over the top. That's quite nice. That works in the composition with these wispy, small, fluffy clouds blowing by. So hopefully it will make for a nice photograph. So about me. So my name's Christian Davies. I've been a photographer for many years. I've won a couple of awards, which is very nice that people have considered that my photography is worthy of awards, which is very complimentary. But I used to work at Photo Vogue that I now own, and the previous owner decided to retire, so I purchased it and have moved it forward in a different direction. More framing services, fine art, print services, an art gallery, a gallery for my own work, plus all kinds of VHS and DVD and USB and audio and various other conversions. So yeah, the business does do very well. So if you're passing Frinton-on-Sea, then please do look Photo Vogue up. There's a link below in the description, and pop in and say hi. It'd be lovely to see you. And the tide's coming in pretty rapidly now, which is cool. It's hiding the foreground rubbish and allowing it to become a more minimal scene with no uncomfortable foreground area, just purely water and the reflections, and also the shadows. The shadows, you've got the long shadow of the boat and the shadow of the first jetty here dropping in, which are all in frame, so I think that quite helps. Do need to wait for the tide to come up a bit more, and we've got 20 minutes till full high tide, and I think there's a bit of a delay as it's coming through the creek, so possibly an hour before it's at full high tide. It'll be interesting to see, but certainly it's coming in quite quickly. So it's looking pretty good now. I like the distance between the surface of the water and the base of the jetties. I like the chains hanging down on the left hand side being highlighted by the sun. Yeah, I think it's a good composition. I focused manually on the end of this piece of wood sticking out here. And then I'll focus manually on the front of the bow, or the bow of the boat, and then if need be blend them, but I've got f14 at the moment, so I think that should be more than sufficient. This isn't too close as a foreground object, so sometimes if you've got your foreground element really close, you're going to need to focus stack to keep everything in focus from front to back, so you may need to do 5 exposures of different focus points to then blend them together. But in this case the foreground is far enough away that one shot should be fine. You see there is a lot going in the background over there, but it's not of real interest, so I'm not too worried if that's not super sharp. But yeah, I'm going to carry on now. So I've manually focused on there, and I'm at 30 seconds, f14, ISO 64. Double check everything's okay. I like to check in the viewfinder, and then yeah, stand alongside the camera to block the wind, and start another exposure. I've changed my composition a little bit just to include a little bit more of the jetty on the right hand side, and also make sure that I've got everything in of the wreck. It's a little bit difficult to get perfect sharpness, so what I've done is I've gone manual focus and zoomed in on the piece of wood and made sure that that's super sharp, and then yeah, carry on my exposures from there. I'm using the Z7 II with a 14 to 30mm lens at the moment 18mm. I'm at f14, 30 seconds, well, bouncing between 20 and 30 seconds, ISO 64, just to give me that super sharp detail. Yeah, the tide's still climbing, still coming in and covering some of the foreground interest, including the toilet that was just down to my right hand side, which is a bonus. Thankfully I don't need to use it, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Lots of dog walkers wandering by on the other side of the bank. I'm excited to be going off to Glencoe in a couple of days' time. So we've got some snow forecast for the mountains. It should be today actually. So yeah, drive up there, which is only about 600 miles. So I'll leave Tuesday about 3 o'clock in the morning, get there midday, and then do a little bit of photography around the Glencoe region, park up in the ski centre, have a big dinner, and jump in bed I think, and then possibly come back on Saturday, weather dependent. Hopefully we get a few flurries of snow in between, so I'm really looking to posting some videos for you guys, mostly Rannoch Moor, the waterfalls, loads of photography online of Glencoe. You know, it's a photographer's paradise and I've been there many times myself, but yeah, really excited to go. It's my first big solo adventure in my camper van, so yeah, excited to post you some videos. So I've changed composition again, trying to work the scene to try and find the best composition that I can from it. I'm sure there are many others, and it would be lovely to see some other photographers see what they can get and how they do it. But for me, I've come a little higher so that I can include the wheelhouse, also the chains running that are quite illuminated by the sun, so they've got quite a lot of highlights down one side, shadow the other side, which will look cool in black and white. Yeah, and still included the jetty, manual focused on the wood at the front there, and obviously the side of the boat is very much highlighted, and you've also got the reflection of the boat just under, which looks nice. I can't include the full reflection without getting very close, so I may well do that shortly, having to shield the 10-stop filter as well, because the sunlight is getting very close to just overlapping the edge of the filter holder, so got to be careful about that. Yeah, just wish there was some more interest in the sky. It's blue sky day, definitely. Okay, I'm focusing now more on the jetty. It's a little bit precarious up here. This is all completely rotten, so I'm having to be a bit careful where I stand. But yeah, I'd love to get the other side of the jetty, but it's just water, so I can't get in there. So I'm trying to get as far as I can over on the left-hand side to include the curve of the jetty, and also I'm up quite high, so that I get some separation between the end of the jetty and the bank on the far side, although some of the wood does stick up way past that, so I can't do anything about that. But yeah, I'll sneak round, try not to break the wood, and see whether I can come over a bit further to the left without dropping my tripod in the water or my camera. So, okay, this is pretty much as far as I can go sensibly, so let's level everything up. Check my composition. Yeah, I quite like that. Got even space and balance around the end. Got some clouds moseying through. Just need to level up a bit more. So I want to make sure I'm focused down on the foreground area there. So I'll just double check my focus. Got some clouds moseying through now. Got some quite strong highlights there as well, so you have to be a bit careful on those with that sun so bright. Right, okay, careful where I'm standing. Try and block the wind as much as possible. And off we go. Got some clouds moseying through now, so at least there'll be some interest in the sky, some streaking in the sky. I think the tide's peaked now, it's on its way down. So compositionally I've tried to include the sweep on the left hand side of this old jetty, and some of the shadows that are being thrown down onto the water and the reflections. I'd like the shadow on the right hand side, but as I've mentioned before, I can't get over that side. It's all flooded. There are some other interesting jetties around as well, but I don't know how long this part will be accessible for, so try and get what we can. So I'm just going to do a couple of different exposures. I'm going to do a 60-second one, which is going to be way over the top, but it's going to give me some shadow detail underneath the jetty. And then I'll do a 30-second, and then a 20-second, and then I can blend them together if need be. So I'm at pretty much 30mm. Again, f14, ISO 64, focused on the old electricity point, just a third of the way in, and hopefully that will give us a nice exposure. Just using my hand to block the sun as it's just coming round the side of the filter, with the filter holder. Okay, so another one at 25 seconds and then one at 20 seconds, and we should be pretty much covered. So I think pretty much that's it. I think we're done for the day. A runny nose because it's quite cold. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it, and it's time for me to go back to the camper and have a cheese sandwich and a cup of tea. Thanks again.